Hey, 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 everyone. Great to see you out there. Awesome, awesome, awesome to see you. In fact, thank you so much for tuning in on this Sunday morning here, joining me and Eric today for a very, very special Psychiatric Sunday. Of course, we have our new series going on, which started last week. Our first Psychiatric Sunday was the debut of this series, and it was a smashing success. People loved it. So I feel very, very good about continuing this series. And of course, this is the series that's almost in a way never ending because, well, there's just thousands of hundreds, if not 1,000 letters that we have to deal with. And, well, we have all the time in the world. So we are going to do a lot of analysis. And of course, joining me on this trek as equal co-producer and host of this show, even though I started. But this man is equally, possibly more important, in fact, because he's got the mind that I don't have, and we love listening to his analysis and his words. May I present to you the one now, the only Eric Galati. Eric, how are you,
You are
sir?
the one and only Manny Grossman, who does have a mind, because you recognize my mind.
Good one. You know what? You know what works about this, Eric, and why the best collaborations for me, and I guess for anybody, is really I always try to find people who are strong at what I'm weak at, right? And I always try to be strong at what other people are weak at. So, in this regard, you really help me out because I just don't have the analytical mind that you have when it comes to analyzing these letters and finding these subtle details and bringing these things up in such an articulate way. So, Eric, we couldn't be happier, of course, to see you. And so, why don't you say hi to the audience for a second
Well,
while I take a look at the chat?
everybody, hello. And also, after we finish two letters, we've got a special guest, somebody you know, Bronx County Detective Jim Fay. And I did not know that Jim also was involved in pedagogy, namely, he was an educator, right?
Yes, and for those who think that the word pedagogy is somehow a bad word,
Oh, it's
because
a beautiful word.
I remember when I was a teacher at NYBG in those great years, the word pedagogy always came up, and I was like, "What the? Why are people talking about pedophiles? What's going on with this pedo business here?" I never knew what that word meant. So, what does pedagogy mean, actually?
Well, it has to do with one who basically teaches children, then an educator.
An educator,
You know,
exactly.
we've lost a lot of words in this. Egregious really means somebody who's distinct and honorable, and now it means somebody who's worthless and a degenerate. But Jim is going to be approaching the investigation from another perspective, and it's going to be very interesting when you hear it. And it's very good because it shows that this is not just a whodunit. This is a very profound investigation, and we welcome everybody in. Like you and I, Manny, you're tending to believe Berkowitz acted alone. I'm tending to believe there were others. There are cops who believe he was alone, and there are serious cops. This is without influence of Maury Terry's book, who on the inside always believed he was with someone.
True.
So anyway, take it
Well,
away.
so just on that note, real quick, where I'm at with Son of Sam is Berkowitz alone, and I hold out the possibility of maybe one other person acting as a getaway or a lookout in some capacity, but that is it for me. I am basically 99.99% in the Berkowitz alone camp. And of course, you brought up a very good point. It's no longer a who done it. Now we are into why I done it, and pretty soon we're going to be getting into
Yeah, why?
how I done it.
Yeah, and the thing is, historically, we're now in 1979, except for August 1st and August 2nd, the first psychiatric letter folder. So historically, it's him alone. It's
Correct.
Berkowitz alone. But there are, and I've got to find out where they are, other letters that he wrote that are not part of the psychiatric letters.
I'm very curious to see if there's a tranche of letters between him and Maury Terry. I can't imagine, considering that how much he wrote to Abramson, right, who he really liked, and how much he wrote, in fact, to Klausner. He wrote several letters to Klausner, and he didn't like Klausner at all. I'm actually very curious for the historical record, and if someone who out there who knows if these things exist, you should release them to the public, because at this point, why are you holding things back? If these letters exist, I would like to see them. And what am I talking about? Correspondence between Maury Terry and Berkowitz.
Mm.
Um,
And also in that period, he's the last generation, my generation, of letter writing, where
right,
people really
right.
wrote letters to everyone, and he writes well.
He writes extremely well. He's very well spoken. He's well written. This guy, oh, it's funny too, because I got that book, Occult Bondage and Deliverance, last night.
Oh, yes.
I got it and I started reading page 181 to 183, like he said. We'll analyze that next week. In a nutshell, it's just basically like people can fake their possessions, and that's what he's saying that he did, that he wasn't really demon possessed. He faked all that stuff just to make himself look insane. And I can get behind that, because we do have very cogent, well-written, fairly sane letters by him, which are in the majority. And then, of course, we have all these crazy letters in his apartment. So, there's still a mystery there. But anyway, we got quite a lot to do today, Eric. So why don't we just get into it? So for those of you in the audience, the letters that we will be analyzing today, my friends, and of course, thank you everybody out there in the live stream for joining us. We got 32 people, which is great for a Sunday morning. And you all know who you are. I don't want to sit and name everybody individually. There's too many people, but we really, really thank you for being here with us today. So for those of you in the audience who want to follow along and you don't want to read on the screen, we are doing July 2nd, 1979, and we are doing April 23rd, 1979. And when Jim comes in for his special presentation after we do these two letters, he has like 6 or 7 pages that he'll deal with. We're not going to go through every line of every one of those pages, just certain pertinent points. So welcome to Psychiatric Sunday, Why I Did It, Part 2. So of course we're going through now his motivations, and who better, of course, to speak about his motivations than the man who committed these crimes himself, David Berkowitz. And again, what I want to say as a default, okay, is I'm believing the Berkowitz in these letters. Okay. If you don't believe the Berkowitz in these letters, if you think that he was lying in these letters to somehow play a game and that he was still telling the truth to Maury Terry, well, then you're watching the wrong show. I have made a line in the stand where I have chosen to believe these letters. Every line of them, no. But the general tone of them, I do believe, and I believe that this is Berkowitz at his most truthful. And again, if you do not agree with that premise, change the channel, okay?
I agree with you, except I think we're dealing with a paranoid schizophrenic. And that's the only way I could see him shifting his claim of not being the only one performing these acts. Now,
correct.
And it's interesting. I just want to say this. He feeds a lot to Dr. Abrahamson.
Mm-hmm.
A great deal in the letters he feeds to him. And it almost, I can't say it's the same. I'm starting to wonder if later on in life he feeds a lot to Terry and not that Terry feeds it to him.
I think that, I'm sure a book can be written about the relationship between Maury Terry and David Berkowitz, but there's a very interesting, even in these letters, these psychiatry letters, there are references to the coming cult thesis. We should do a show just on that alone. But Abramson basically says to Berkowitz in one of the letters that we're going to show you on an upcoming show, hey, I'm glad you didn't speak to that Harry Lipsig guy. He's coming to us with all this cult stuff, and I know you didn't know John Carr. And Berkowitz answers back in the affirmative. He goes, yeah, I don't want to participate with Harry Lipsig. That cult stuff is, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says that I didn't know John Carr, and this had nothing to do with a cult. So Eric, you are absolutely 100% spot on that there's something severely wrong with this guy,
Mhm,
to have gone from that to then trolling Maury Terry for the next 20 years.
mhm, mhm.
But why don't we get into the letter?
Please do.
Eric, I'll start, and then
Yeah.
when you want to take over duties, you can take over duties. So this is the July 2nd, 1979, and we're starting with this one first. And
Mhm.
thank you, Ruby, so much. Ruby just put up the link to the where you can find these letters, because again, I didn't get this stuff, and I want everybody to see it. So like everyone, download this material. We all need to learn this stuff, because this is like a new day in Son of Sam.
And we welcome anybody else's opinion.
Of course, right? Because right now we have to form new opinions. So we are done arguing over the ultimate evil. The ultimate evil, in my opinion, is in the rear window, the rear mirror. We are rapidly turning away from that book. I'm only using it now to prove how wrong it was. And we're doing a show this Thursday on Untermeyer Park, and how Maury got all that wrong as well. But yeah, we have a bunch of new stuff. And like I say, it's the golden age. Dear Dr. Abramson. I pronounce it Abramson. You pronounce it Abrahamson. That's totally cool.
That's all right.
I just think it's easier to
I
say
just
with
thought because he
Abramson.
was from Norway, I gave it the Germanic pronunciation, but go forward.
I will answer your questions in the June 27th letter shortly, but in the meantime, I hope you can use these. To say what led up to the shootings is very difficult. It was a whole host of things, everything from inconsiderate neighbors who made noise to too many bills, to a series of rotten jobs, to a rotten social life, and a horrifying feeling of becoming an old bachelor or a dirty old man. I had no woman in my life. It was just too much. I never felt so hopeless, so powerless against these noisy forces in my neighborhood. I felt like worthless shit. Never would there be peace and quiet. Never would I have a real girlfriend and an intimate companionship to share my life with. I wanted these things so much, but they seemed unattainable. I couldn't please a woman or make her love me. These women are insatiable anyhow. It was all hopeless.
May I
I,
make a point?
of course.
Seems that whenever he speaks negatively about the female, the woman, he writes WEMON instead of WOMEN. Now, it could be a spelling error, but it's like in the Son of Sam letters. Whenever they're looked at as being filth, diabolical, non-entities, something vile,
Or somebody that didn't love him, that didn't
yet
give
he
him the love
writes
that he wanted.
demon. And I'm thinking, I'm not playing with words, women, demon.
Right.
Again, females are from hell. They're demonic.
It's an obvious parallel to make, for sure,
Mhm.
and definitely. Another thing I want to point out, guys, in these letters, um notice they're all over the letters. And again, there's almost 1,000 letters. I haven't actually counted, but I printed out many hundreds and hundreds of double-sided pages. Notice how when he puts in letters that aren't in the typewritten, it's exactly like it's in the Son of Sam letter, in the Breslin letter. He puts a little not here, but he puts it often in these letters. He puts a little triangle pointing up and a little and the correction above it. That's exactly in the Breslin letter. All right. I guess I just exploded. I couldn't take it anymore. The best way to describe it would be like a volcano erupting. So of course, notice he doesn't mention, hey, what led up to this was I met Michael Carr at a party in 1975, and they put the 44 in my hands, and then we ended up at Untermeyer Park, and Mr. Real Estate, we ended up at his house. Notice how that's nowhere to be seen in any of this stuff.
No,
I
it's not. But I'm thinking of the earlier letter where he calls creatures and he blames the cars, Cassara and Grossman.
Right, all people who in his crazy mind were all oppressing him due to noise.
They were equal to dogs.
They were
Dog
equal to
dogs.
dogs, exactly, and the
Now,
devil,
in
of
this fifth
course.
paragraph, we're going to see once again the unity of human being and canine.
I had to destroy the people who were mentally oppressing me. I felt that these women were doing this to me, and these neighbors with their yelping dogs, being tired of all this damn shit, and I just struck back.
Yeah, women, the natives. The queen is in the attic. The barking dogs.
I,
This is
I don't I don't necessarily associate the woman here with the Wicker Street people. because
No.
he says the neighbors here
Mhm.
with their yelping dogs, so he differentiates between the women and the neighbors. So I'm not so sure that he's talking about the Netto women here.
No, I was just thinking he's attracted to the female,
Hmm.
and then the attraction to the female, there's always kind of the accompaniment of a manic barking dog.
Right, right. And
You
it just so happened that everywhere he went, there was barking dogs around.
know.
All right, people just don't understand that I had to shed blood, blood that really wasn't so innocent. I'm not sorry I did it. By society's rules, it was unlawful, but at that stage, I didn't care anymore. I very much wanted to die, even though I'm fearful of God because of his power to cast people into hell. I mean, just let me get my revenge.
Revenge. I mean, we're dealing here. That paragraph alone is the definition of somebody who's not only is both psychopath and sociopath.
Totally. Just let me get my revenge. So he kills Valentina Suriani because Sam Carr's dog is oppressing him. I mean,
Mhm.
this guy is sick. And it's great that we're reading these because again, Maury Terry made us think that this guy was a hapless victim of social forces beyond his control. When we are seeing in very stark terms, not only did he saying he did it, but he's saying he enjoyed it and he loved it and he felt justified.
I wonder, Terry probably maybe never had access to these letters.
That is the $1,000,000 question because there's certain things in his book that makes me think that he did have access to some of these letters. I can't pinpoint it right now off the top of my head, but I can't say for sure one way or the other. It's just not something that I know. All
Because
right.
according to medicine, you're not supposed to release a patient's records.
Of course, but
But then this guy came out with a book in '82.
right, and these are public documents. They're FOIA'd, so if they really were that sensitive, I don't think they would have put them out.
Mm.
I can live with what I did. I don't have nightmares over it or anything like that. Only hurting my father and aunt and uncle bother me. I hurt my dad and it hurts me. It tears me up. However, you must understand, he was so far away. I just couldn't go over and talk with him. He was always with Julia. I needed him so. No one was left. It was just me and my guns, the last resort. Frankly, I went for broke. The good job in the post office meant nothing. I loved the job and I was a hard and honest worker. No doubt I had financial security for the future, but compared to the loneliness and all that noise in my life, it meant nothing. I felt homeless. To hell with what anyone says. I felt justified.
Mm.
Now, this is a very interesting paragraph for me. And one of the things I do often is I read these letters. I before we do these shows, but I like to really get into the analysis right on the air so it's fresh. And one of the things I'm getting heavy if Gary's in the chat. This paragraph I just read, no one was left. Heavy taxi driver vibes.
Mm.
He's talking about his friends abandoning him, right? His loneliness. He had nothing in his life. He was hopeless. Big time taxi driver vibes in there.
The difference is that the justification for Travis Bickle was to do away with people who were, in fact, bad people, evil people,
Correct. And
even
it
though he has problems himself.
right, and that's the biggest, of course, the biggest contradiction. And if Berkowitz was influenced by Taxi Driver, which I'm pretty sure he was, I mean, we know he was. His friends told us. Yeah, that's a huge difference, and one that I wonder if Berkowitz actually himself understood.
See, when
All
he
right.
says I was justified, he speaks of justification. I wonder if that, even though he's not saying the demonic was a hoax and all of that, and the possession was a hoax, if it kind of psychologically nullifies what he wrote in March 20th, that it was, and to McGraw in February 21st, it was all fake, this demonic possession, because this is a guy possessed. In a way, he's possessed on with a distorted view of life.
True, but I think in his mind, he's just thinking of possession in terms of devil possessing me, strictly like religion, not psychologically possessed. All right, there were times I was in trouble. There was times that I was troubled over my sudden urges after the shootings began. I used to visit my sister, and when I did, my guns, maps, and extra ammunition and other related paraphernalia were always carefully stored in my car for quick use. So right there, extremely telling. It
Let me
shows.
let me read the next paragraph and put it together with that.
Sure.
This
Let
is
me just quickly just say again. Here he's saying that he kept his guns in his car. He had maps. This guy was mapping things out. This goes to my preparation, planning, and his known to roam business. All right, Eric, take it away.
after a visit, but also almost daily, I left around 10 or 11 o'clock to begin making my rounds, so to speak. I did travel in the vicinity of Glen Oaks Village and Floral Park, as well as many other places. Yes, Queens was special to me, very special, but this I can't explain. Shooting someone in Queens was an obsession. Now, specifically, the paragraph before and this one I call Manny's answer of a cold-blooded killer's behavior. You had told me back in 2021, one of the first things that you queried, and then you also have said it once or twice, definitely once on the show. Here we have this cold-blooded killer, but then on his way home, he bumps or dents somebody's car, and he gets out and leaves his name and telephone number.
And an apology.
Yeah. So here we have the analogy where everything is so well planned military like for the slayings, but he still has that normal side to him of proper behavior where he goes to see his sister and she
Yeah.
never knows the blood that's on his hands. It's
Right.
I wrote that he behaves at his sister is an answer to his cold-blooded calculating methodology of not overlapping his existence and relationship to those outside of his planned executions, making a dent in someone's car and giving his personal details if the owner wished to pursue the incident. So there are two different worlds here for him.
Right.
Those who are targeted will be targeted and not the others. So it's not as if it's like, I'm going to nuclear bomb everyone.
Right.
There's your answer. He's not nobody is one dimensional in life.
Especially as we're seeing, not old Davy Berkowitz.
No.
What's interesting though is I've read deeper into these letters, and we're not gonna reveal the punchline now on this show, but he has some very interesting things to say about his biological family on some of these nights that he was over at their house. Oh wait, here it is. Here it is himself. Sorry, it was right here.
Yeah.
When I got my bad urges about my family, knowing that my gun was so, okay, getting to the next letter, close, the next page. Yet frightened by these thoughts, I would just go take a long walk to release my mental tensions I had for the moment. Walking for me has always been very therapeutic. So he actually is saying there that he wanted to kill his family in some.
Yeah.
He got urges to kill his family.
And once again, we never hear much about the family in The Ultimate Evil. Nothing.
You hear that he forged a relationship with his mother, but you never hear about his sisters or his aunt who lived in Yonkers, or his cousin Robert who lived 3 blocks away from him in Yonkers. Maury really committed journalistic malpractice. I mean,
if he didn't know of these letters. But there's also a question that just come to my mind in that 11th paragraph of this letter I read. Why was Queens so special?
Well, I don't know exactly. I think he answers that in another letter, but I forget exactly.
Well, what he does say is that Glen Oaks is in Queens, right?
Correct.
Okay. The structure of Glen Oaks, where his sister Rosalind lives, he never would be able to carry out the murders.
Right. Two narrow streets.
Yeah, but yet he likes Queens County, and so it's quite curious why Queens County, and also forgive me if I just add this. I was skimming through looking for something which I didn't find, and Abrahamson or Abramson does say to him in another letter that he was delighted, I'm paraphrasing, that he didn't allow the Queens district attorney to question him.
Yeah, because they were going after the cult angle and they knew it. So he was actually patting David on the back for not entertaining the stupid notion that he had accomplices. And then all of a sudden, the next thing we know, Terry comes in and Berkowitz is saying, I didn't do it all. And I was, You know, it's funny because even to Maury Terry, he goes, I was at all of them, but I didn't pull the trigger at all of them. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, he was at all of them and he pulled the trigger. I mean, anyway, um, I'm trying to figure out why I was born. I don't know why I was, and this troubles me. Was my birth an accident or deliberate? Were my natural parents careless, or was my mother, Betty Falco, trying to get pregnant? Was she trying to get something from Joe that she thought she wasn't getting? A possession, maybe? Was I a ploy or a tool to be used by her to get more money or attention from Kleinman? Was she trying to revive his interest in her sexually? I wish I knew the answers. This is why I don't believe she really loves me or ever did. There may have been a maternal instinct or attachment, which was probably based on a combination of tradition and guilt. It's natural instinct for a mother to be drawn to a child, but that's all. There's no real love between us. Now, so here he's trying to figure out, of course, the deeper meanings into his existence, into his very existence, which is interesting. But you know, one thing I found very interesting, in which Maury never told us, and really, and it's not just on Maury, it was really the people of the world never told us, is that this Kleinman and Betty Falco, his mother, was married to a guy named Richard Falco. Richard Falco abandoned her years before she started with this Joseph Kleinman. She was just using his name. Betty and Joseph Kleinman, according to these letters, had a 30-year relationship where he was spent every day at her house and then came home to his wife at the end of the day. And everybody knew it. Everybody knew they were having this relationship. Everybody knew that they had this child together. So I found that extremely interesting. Not necessarily any insight into the crime, but just like more backstory on this guy.
And Falco was not the biological father.
No. And he's nowhere to be found. He had abandoned Betty years before she took up with Kleinman.
And these paragraphs you're reading, the 19th one will end my mom got nothing. You know, the 20th is the last one.
Right.
This is very much the way a lot of adopted children think also. Whether they know their parents or not.
Uh-huh. In what way?
Well, they search for their origin.
Right.
Why was I adopted? Who are my real parents? What were they like? Why did this or that happen to me?
And it's clear with Berkowitz that his crime spree in some way. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist, but he was conceived in a car, and then he went out and shot people making love in cars. I mean, to me, there's a parallel there, a clear parallel. All right, so let's get on with the letters.
Interesting.
We got a lot to do. Secretly, I believe that Betty resents me, that I caused her problems and got in her way. No doubt I was a headache to her. I don't believe she wanted to keep me, and if she did, it was probably and perhaps made some slight efforts to get Kleinman to keep me. It was probably out of unconscious guilt. When I was a kid, I often got picked on for being Jewish. There were plenty of fights between me and the Italian guys, but they were the aggressive ones. And as a result, as a child, I was very ashamed of being Jewish. Now, I'm not, even though Jews are scorned and badmouthed in prison here. That's actually an interesting paragraph, and I want to get Comparetto in on this discussion because he talks in another letter about how he always sought out non-Jewish friends. He just thought that they were more fun and cooler. And so I'm curious to hear from guys like Comparetto who knew him, if there was any of that dynamic, back in the day. If they
there's that type of once again that dichotomy of opposing. He's very deliberate and definitive here, but then other times, just like with other topics, it's a completely different version he gives.
I know.
It could have just been street fights. I mean, commonly, I'm not a city of New Yorker, but commonly they always, Jewish people had always said the Italians were the only ones who never had prejudice against us.
Well, yeah, because they'd worked together in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so why do you suppose that Kleinman never left my mom any money or security after 30 years? So there he is, right? Saying that they had a 30-year relationship. How could he not? How could someone be so cruel, spiteful, and selfish? Something must have happened between Betty and Joe. Perhaps it was something traumatic. I mean traumatic. He had plenty of money. His kids were grown. He had a will prepared and plenty of other financially secure resources, yet she didn't get a dime. Why? My mom got nothing while his frigid wife got it all. This is a mystery. You probably wonder why I try to type as often as I can. One is reason is to consolidate everything. Okay, that's there's nothing in there, so we don't need to carry on with that letter. So very interesting letter. He talks about the noise, the conditions of his life, how he was lonely, how he everything was building up inside of him. To me, this is very acceptable justification. Not in terms of like I don't say, oh yeah, I agree, yeah, go out and shoot people. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, in my mind, for this crazy guy, that was enough justification that he needed to go out and start shooting people. It's perfectly clear to me. I find nothing controversial about any of it.
But you see, when he speaks of shooting people, we're talking about what would be known as the Son of Sam murders, right?
Right.
Okay. The linkage, though, to the insanity of killing and murdering, where do we link that? That's the missing link with Wicker Street, the continuity, the continuance.
Yeah, like
where is the linkage there?
the linkage between what? Wicker Street and the
In what
shootings?
he does in Wicker Street and later on the Son of Sam murders.
I think we're going to get to that, maybe not today, but in these letters he just essentially says that he lost it. He was living in this apartment. There was noise below him, across the street, at Wicker Street, at Warburton Avenue, and that coupled with the rest of the things going wrong in his life made him just snap. And that requires, I think, a very trained psychologist or psychiatrist to get into. But from the view from 30,000 feet and as a layman, it's making perfect sense. I mean, this is not hard to understand, guys. You know what I'm saying? All right, you want to carry on? Let's carry on with the next letter.
Yeah.
So Jim, we'll get to you after this letter.
Now, is he writing to Abramson here?
I'm not sure who he's writing to. This is
out. It's crossed out. He says, "So you're back to preaching again, I see."
I think he's talking to his girlfriend here. He had a bunch of girlfriends. One name was D Channel, one was Bernice. Right, like so Mae Brussel wrote like Michael Douglas snapped in the movie Falling Down. Similar, yes, absolutely. And Michael, did you ever see that movie, Eric?
Yeah, I did. I saw Falling Down. I thought that there were a lot of good points to it.
I love that movie.
Oh yeah. I mean, the favorite line in that is when he walks in and he says, "Chris, Bill. I don't even call my boss by his first name."
Yeah, that was a great movie. That and Fight Club. I remember seeing Fight Club in the movie theater and getting out and wanting to just like destroy all of the establishment. All right. So you're back to preaching again, I see. Really, I don't mind, but what caused this? Did you listen to the sermon on the radio this morning? There are a lot of things that disturb me about God, things I don't understand that seem the opposite of each other. Maybe you could help me if you like. By the way, very Son of Sam letter like here. If you like the word like. I wanted to write you a letter to tell you why I hate certain people in this world. All right, very Son of Sam like. Jimmy Breslin, I wanted to write you a letter to tell you why, right? Exactly same wording as the Son of Sam letters.
And also back in the May 16th letter, the word certain
right
people, specific people.
Right, and then here he again with his famous people in this world, people of the world, people, world, people. It's funny because there's a letter I should have had it up here, but he got that from his mother. His mother Betty wrote him a letter, and she's trying to tell him to cash in on all the books and movies that are being made, and she writes, "The world is going to hell anyway, so screw it." And I was thinking, that's where he got it. That was where he got it. All right. But I don't know how to begin. My desires to kill and destroy have not died away. The urge is still strong. However, because of the restricted, regimented environment of Attica, I am forced to put a lid on it, so to speak. So he can't kill in the joint, essentially. He's pretty.
But if he was out, he'd kill.
But if he was out, he'd kill. Right, exactly. Far cry from the poor schlub from Stratford Avenue that Maury Terry would have us believe of this guy. Okay, here he is saying that if he was out, he would kill. That's pretty psychotic to me.
Can I read the next two paragraphs?
Absolute. Please, Eric.
It can't seem to go away either. When I was in Kings County, all these people wrote saying they're going to pray for me. Then I also got involved with Ollie Smith, in which I found myself repenting day after day, begging forgiveness, knowing within myself that if I were to be released that day, I would have gone and killed someone else. This is a very eerie paragraph because I've tried to get in touch with Ollie Smith's granddaughter.
Uh-huh.
Ollie Smith's granddaughter, Patricia Amos, said that her evangelist, her Pentecostal ministress grandmother, step grandmother, known as Sister Smith, unleashed something very dark. And she said, my grandmother put him up on a pedestal.
Put who up on a pedestal?
David Berkowitz.
Really?
Yeah, that's a quotation. She said that to the journalist Tom Haller.
So we need to find out more about this Ollie Smith person.
Yeah, he put her up on a pet. In other words, it's not that he put her up on a pedestal of somebody helping him. She put Berkowitz up. Now I want to ask Patricia Amos, what do you mean by that? How do you know?
Let's get into that on another show because you're losing me here. I don't understand where this is going because I just don't know the players involved. So let's get into this Ollie Smith on another show. Yeah. Now, one thing here that I want to just point out, and then you can take the next paragraph. Mm-hmm. I wonder if this is secretly why he's so not into getting parole nowadays. He says, well, I'm guilty and I did the murders and I'm a born again Christian, but I wonder if in his heart he still knows that if he gets out, he wants to kill. Just spitballing.
Well, I think that is very intuitive on your part. Very, very intuitive. I mean, that very well. I mean, look, the man's mind is such a mind of hypocrisy and contradictions. You could be right, Manny.
Right.
You very well could be right.
He could be getting off on all this religious stuff, fooling people. And anyway, let's carry on. You want to take the next letter, like Judas and Esau?
Yeah, like Judas and Esau, I repented, felt sorry for what I've done, but repented only psychologically, not spiritually from the heart. Actually, I'm as wicked as ever and continually fantasize about murder and sex. However, I never, ever equate the two.
He just did it.
Yeah, he just did. He just did. I mean, I never have violent sexual fantasies. I want to be a lover to women, but I want to destroy them too. The urge is powerful and the hatred intense. Lover to women, properly spelt women, not women.
Right. Yeah, good point. And of course, then he talks about wanting to destroy them. I mean, this is a sick dude right here.
Yeah, this is where I think of Rothstein. He says you got to have a strong mind when you get involved in these things.
That's true.
What you're going to encounter.
It's gotten to the point that I've given up hope of ever evolving to a spiritual state, much as I had at Beth Haven. That was the place, that was the church in Louisville, which was merely mental, not genuine. At least it was something. Besides, I don't want to get on this religious kick again and have to pound the gospel down people's throats like I did in Kentucky. Like Hitler and a multitude of other perverts, I am what you call a sex-starved daydreamer. Now here he is comparing himself to Hitler. Grandiose delusions, anybody? Totally psychotic? Who the hell compares themselves to Hitler? Especially a Jewish cat. Never, ever will I be satisfied, nor will I ever really be able to hold a beautiful, passionate woman in my arms and caress and kiss her all over her body from her head to her toe. Never will I taste that delicious nectar from between her legs like I did in Korea. And I loved it. It was so easy in Korea. It was money, and that's all. You threw your money on the table, about $4, and for an hour you did what you desired to do to a nice warm body. You fantasize about a girl back home, and you did what your body and soul desired. There was little or no conversation, no intimate, deeply involved relationship with which I fear very much. That's weird. Why does he fear it when he was saying that all he wanted was a relationship?
Yeah.
Yes, it was all so easy and cheap, the land of make-believe. It was so uncomplicated. Here I could never keep a woman interested. There's just too much competition, too much lust and jealousy. I hate every rotten second that I ever spent with some girls that I went out with. It was miserable and dull. So deep was my need to express my feelings to, in some way, my intimate feelings. I mean, an intimate, deep, passionate, but loving sexual relationship. And those girls, silly, giggly, scared, stupid, and immature. I'm not talking about the tramps, those little can't get enoughs. That's another story. So, real quick here before we continue, to me, he's devolving into craziness here. I don't even understand what the hell he's saying.
No, it becomes from being a coherent writer, it
Right.
becomes what they call the art of the insane, not being sarcastic.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. Anything that comes to his mind, I wouldn't even call it a stream of consciousness. He's not a beat poet here,
Yeah.
and look what he says here. My relationship with those girls was much like it was with God,
Hmm.
silly, uh, so
Meaningless.
meaningless, void of emotion. Back in Kentucky, I was lonely. Beth Haven was my escape. I was around thousands of people. We shook hands and said, "Jesus loves you, brother." So we learned the name of the church there, Beth Haven.
No, we knew that already.
We
But
did. Oh, I
yeah, but what we're seeing here is an intense need to connect to humanity, to the people. He needs to connect to the people of the world, even though he hates the people of the world.
But don't you get the impression that he wants to be worshipped in some respect? He wants to
Yes.
be looked at.
Well, he's sitting there comparing himself to Hitler, so
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's
totally.
that's that's why I didn't mean to lose you. I mentioned that the niece of Smith said she put him up on a pedestal.
We have to do more research on this Ollie Smith. That's gonna
Yeah,
be something I'm gonna look into.
right.
What's love? Love is something I felt for my grandfathers, Harry and Jack. Love is what I felt for my mother, Pearl Berkowitz. Love is now something I no longer feel, an emotion that no longer pleases me. Why? Because God slew them, because he took them away forever. Grandpa Harry died and went to the everlasting fire when I was about age 6. Poppy Jack when I was about 9. My mother went to torment him when I was 14. Now I'm a changed man. I've grown as cold as ice, void of emotions and feelings.
He's not void of emotions and feelings. He has just bad emotions and distorted feelings.
Good point. Hence Dr. Schwartz's statement, this man is emotionally dead. He can't love. He has no feelings for anyone. Life has no value, no worth for him. It's cheap. Thus, we have 6 dead and 7 wounded, as I raised my guns to their head, aimed, and calmly executed them, their lives snuffed out and delivered back to God with return to sender stamped on their foreheads. Let them return from whence they came. Let them return unto their maker, says Berkowitz. Yeah, he's God. He's God right here.
Yeah, he's completely insane.
Yeah. Cold blood, a man with a heart of steel, incapable of compassion, is the only person who could have pulled that trigger. Ha ha, I got you back, God. I got my revenge. You took my mother from me, King of Kings, you Indian giver. Ha ha, I got you back. Payback, payback, hella. I waited so long for the payback. You are cruel. You hurt me. You took away the only ones I ever loved, and now I can love you no more. I can love no more. I hate you. I hate you. Go shed. I don't know what that says. Sit up there on your
Go
throne and
ahead.
go ahead. Sit up there on your throne and watch over everything. Sit back and watch while people wallow in suffering. Stay up there with your record book and chalk up everyone's sins. Find and point out everyone's faults and transgressions. Then accumulate enough evidence to send them all to hell without mercy. Narrow is the way of life everlasting, and few there will be that find it. Shut them out. Hurl them into the burning lake of fire. Go ahead, you sadistic bastard. What the hell is this? Eric, this guy's losing it here. I mean,
Yeah, well, I have made some notes about this piece. Paragraph 16, which begins in capital letters, cold blood. It makes me refer back to the March 20th first psychiatric letter.
right, which we're going to talk about with Jim.
Yeah, where it's just 1 month and 3 days later, this letter, and he sent it and determined with his revenge on God and the facts of life. It's
I
it's
mean,
almo it's almost as if he destroys everything he calmly explained to the
exactly.
psychiatrist.
Right.
And then I have noticed from paragraph 16 to paragraph 21, go ahead, take my life back. I don't want it. I don't want to keep it. Slay me too. The prose is in a different style, but the significative is no different from the Son of Sam letters in some respect.
There's so many echoes of the Son of Sam letters, and it's very interesting that you said it's a different style, because what was the biggest argument against Berkowitz writing the Son of Sam letters? That they were not his style of writing, that they were different styles from one another. Well, here we are seeing that within one letter, he can go from fairly cogent and normal and, well, to a degree, to batshit crazy within one paragraph.
Yeah, well, here he's completely deranged with what he's writing, but the Son of Sam letters seem to be ever so determined and well planned.
Oh, definitely. And
Because now
that
you're
you
finding people.
you know that he was practicing those letters. We know for a fact that he was, because we have mock-ups that lead up to the Son of Sam
And
letters that
this
we've already
teaches
seen.
us for further investigation and everyone else, even with other cases. You could have a different type of calligraphy or print, but you've got to look deep into the meaning that's being related. And even though the penmanship is different or the print is different, it could still be the same person.
It's totally in my mind now, the Breslin letter and the Borelli letter, totally written by Berkowitz. No doubt about it. No other help necessary. Oh, it's funny too, because I should have had this ready for the show, but everyone was talking about the Son of Sam letter. How did he learn to make that symbol? Well, on the cover of Occult Bondage and Deliverance by Kurt Koch, there's two of the symbols that are in the Son of Sam symbol on that cover of that book.
Mhm.
And one of which, when we did our presentation with Craig, he talked about extensively. That's on the cover of that book. So he
Is
could have.
that the circle with the arrows?
Yes. Let me. Well, you take the next paragraph, and I'll try to find that.
Yeah, well, we begin here with
We're just gonna take it to part 2, because part 2 doesn't have anything to do with.
it begins, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I went too far, got carried away, but I think it's in my best interests to no longer keep feelings and emotions bottled up and repressed. Right here, he goes back to saying, I have no more emotions and feelings, but now he's saying I must open up.
Right. It's insane. I
Yeah,
found it. Eric. Let me
let me,
just
yeah.
you finish, and then we'll go to
I
the
once
picture.
used to, I once, I once used to, and look what happened. I I blew up, and all that hate, all that anger, all that frustration went. Need I say more? Yes, you got to say more because you've been expressing hatred and insanity and bloodshed until now. And now you're saying I can't keep it repressed and because of all the hate and anger because I didn't express myself.
But you know what's sick about this
And
is
he's
that this
just
is
saying that if he was out of Attica,
he
the
would
same
kill.
thing would happen.
Right. What's sick about this is, like, this is humorous in a fact. I blew up, and all that hate, all that anger, all that frustration went. Need I say more? Like, he's like a comedian here in a way. He's joking about it in a sense. He's kind of. Maybe I'm just misinterpreting this, but just the need I say more is very cold. Um, All right. So listen, the rest of this is not pertinent, the rest of this letter, and I want to get to Jim's presentation. So before we get to that, I just want to show you the cover of Occult Bondage and Deliverance.
Can I
Uh,
just say one thing
yeah,
before you go? Well, he
yeah,
calls Satan and the devil Slewfoot, another name, but further on in paragraph 24, uh, he speaks of the murdering Christ and the murdering Satan. He once again merges Christ and Satan. He must have learned someplace about this equilibrium, although the Process Church of the Final Judgment doesn't speak of the murdering Christ.
right. Well, that's where people are going to say that's his process. That's his process learning, merging of Christ and Satan. But
Similarities aren't the same thing.
exactly. So here's the cover of Occult Bondage and Deliverance, the very book that he said was one of the biggest influences on his crime spree.
Mhm.
So let's take a look a little bit at this. Sorry, what did I do? Let's take a look at this a little bit. Notice how it's a circle, right? It has the X's in a way. You can interpret these as X's right here. And then look, there's the female sign.
Mhm.
There's that sign for sulfur, I believe, and then with the 0 with the O on top and the U on there, right?
Mhm.
There's an arrow, right? So here's 3 elements from the Son of Sam letters that are on this book that he particularly said was extremely influential to him. So I am calling bullshit on the Eliphas Levi, and I'm saying that Berkowitz wrote the Son of Sam symbol. He didn't need John Carr to write it, and he just got the idea from looking at the cover of this book, probably high on acid one day. That's just my theory.
No, well, I think that what you conjecture is. I mean, come on, these symbols go back centuries.
I know, but there it is. There's 3 of them on a book that he said was his
That's
major.
right.
Right. So hey, we got Tracy Dupay in the house. Hey Tracy, I was walking on Lincoln Terrace the other day after I did my video with Mike Lorenzo, and I wanted to film your old house. I thought it was 30 Lincoln Terrace, but I could find no 30 Lincoln Terrace. So put in the address where I got to go. I want to go take a video of that. All right. So listen, we got a lot to do with Jim. Jim has graciously put together a little presentation on his own. Let me just get that up before I get Jim in here. Give me a second. There we go. There we go. And here is the man of the hour, Mr. Fay.
Quite an early hour at that. It's
Hey,
I'm used to the 6 o'clock shows.
psychiatric psychiatric Sunday. The whole thing is coffee with tea and coffee as we wake up to total insanity and psychopathy.
Well, how are you guys doing? All right?
Doing very well.
Good, good.
I'm looking forward to what you have to offer, Jim. What were you actually? This was after you were a law enforcement officer. You became an educator.
Yeah, at the retirement.
Oh,
Excuse me. Now the one thing I wanted to bring out is that last letter you were looking at. He writes a lot of nonsense in there. Well, nothing not in that folder, but what you and Eric were just discussing. Yeah. He talks off the wall and a lot of psycho stuff, but trying to decipher that stuff and trying to put it with insanity or Satanism, all you got to do is ask any cop that worked in uniform in an urban area. David Berkowitz is not unique in that. There are thousands of people around us that just don't get caught up in the system. They don't kill people either, but they don't get caught up in the system.
Right.
And the reason why David is letting all this stuff out is because he's in prison. He knows nothing's going to happen to him by letting it all out.
Right.
Maybe it's
Good
how
point.
he feels, And in fact, he says in one thing, he says, I'm adjusting very well to the regimentation of prison.
Right.
That's
He
what
loved the regimentation. Right.
But the point I wanted to bring out, which I found very interesting, and going back to my educational experience, was that the letter that's up there now, June 14th, from Abramson to David. And I was just going through it, and he said, "Did you ever do your homework?" I said to myself, "What is he, his father? His homeroom teacher? Why is he asking that?" So as we go to page 2 of that folder, David answers. Sometimes I did my homework. However, this was a rare occasion. The bottom line, he didn't do his homework. So I said, well, all right, maybe I didn't do my homework all the time either. But then we go to the letter July 2nd.
Hold on one second. July 2nd, right there.
Right.
Oh wait, you have a July 2nd. Let me get to that one so I can continue just going. There we go.
What date is the homework letter?
Well, we discussed the homework letter from Abramson, and then
the homework letter was June 16th, 1979.
Okay.
And then and David answered it. But then in this July 2nd letter, he says, Well, we'll get into the first part. Like, never would I have a real girlfriend and intimate relationship to share my life with. That's another issue. He says, I wanted these things so much that they seemed unattainable. I couldn't please a woman or make her love me. These women are insatiable. At that point, my educational background came in. And then I went back and I read it. I said, why would a MD psychiatrist ask that question? Why it was so pertinent? Then we go ahead a little bit to what I labeled as, I think, 7 in this folder. Is that
Page 7?
No, then maybe it's. Is there? Oh, do you have a? All right, I'll just read it. What is the definition?
Hold on. What do we do? What the one that you sent? You mean that last page that you
Yes, I
sent
think I
that
called
was
it 8.
typed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me get that up. Sorry.
Okay.
July 2nd.
Well, there's no date on it. It's not a letter. It's a website.
Give me a second here.
All right. Well, I said to myself, that's a very telling question that the doctor asked, and there's a reason for it. Not just to make small talk. There's a reason he asked it. Because from my experience, the one problem young kids have, and especially in the lower classes, is they suffer from dyslexia. And if you scroll down on that page right there, a little further down, it says here the most common dyslexia is this phonological. And what does it say there? Spelling the same word different ways in the same page.
Very good point.
Excellent.
As well as the other issues in that thing.
Right.
There.
Avoid reading activities, homework, difficulty spelling. He has some spelling problems for sure.
But I'll tell you, as a side note, I have to bring up again, Breslin said something very interesting when he got the letter. He says, I read a lot of threatening letters from people, but I never saw one where a guy used a semicolon.
Yeah.
Berkowitz is a smart guy. I mean, let's not take that away from him,
He was an intelligent guy. And
he is. Well, let's say we can put him in the present tense for the time being.
He is an intelligent guy. And, we were talking about it with Lorenzo the other day on my walk and talk. He was only 24 when he did these things. He was also a little chubby, but he was athletic as well. He talked about how he walked for miles and miles and biked for miles and miles. That had to leave him with core strength. So
the people who put that Weeman thing in there are avoiding the obvious, I think. Well, Dr. Abramson didn't. He looked at it. He was seeking. He must have seen other things in his other writings prior to the women thing. That stuck out to me because we discussed it. But in prior writings, the doctor must have seen something that made him ask that homework question, because one of the first things a grammar school child has with dyslexia is they don't want to do the homework. In most cases, they can't do the homework correctly. And I know that because I dealt directly with one kid who was in the 6th grade who was dyslexic, which I don't have to go into detail, but I sent you a link to it. All right. So now he's dyslexic at an early age. And another point, he brings up that Kleinman, who's his natural father. And he brings up a very interesting point about his childhood.
In which letter? Which one of your?
Well, actually, let me just see if I have it written down here. I didn't print it out because I didn't want to print out too much.
Okay.
But I'll have to. But from memory, let me say this. He brought out a very good point. His mother essentially lived in sin with Kleinman, a guy who had other children with another wife in front of the whole community.
Right.
Everybody knew about it.
30 years.
Right. But even before that, then she has a child from this Kleinman, and she gets rid of him. So she wasn't worried about the social interaction of her living with a married man.
Right.
But David was a problem.
Right.
So you're talking about a guy who had, by his own account, he says he socially, he said on another page, he says, I'm normal mentally, but not socially or emotionally. I mean, he went through a lot of crap.
Right.
as
Yes.
a child. Then he brings out another point. He says, I never felt Jewish. Here I am walking around in the Star of David, Jewish and everything. I never felt Jewish. I didn't even know why I was doing this.
Well, right, exactly. And I find that very interesting, and I want to explore that a little bit more with guys like Comparetto, who knew him, who were his Gentile friends.
That would
Because
be a good point. Yeah.
yeah, he talks about wanting to only befriend Gentiles. So
His own kind. He's Italian.
Even though he was bar mitzvah.
Yeah, well, we all go through the motions.
No, he wasn't Italian, Jim. He was fully Jewish. Broder was
He was
Jewish.
born Italian to old lady Falco.
Yeah, but she just used the name.
Right. Well, what was her maiden name? We don't know. Right?
Broder. She was Jewish.
Broder.
All right, let's put it this way. Broder sounds German, like probably Christian.
It could be, but Kleinman was Jewish, but
Yeah.
he was like, if he had it, it was like
he
me.
Jewish or just German?
Good point. Kleinman.
We don't know.
And I don't think it was spelled like
2 N's or 1 M. Because if it's 1 N, it could be German. If it's 2 N's, it's Jewish.
I thought it was the other way around that way.
Oh,
This is actually good points, because no one's actually ever really thought. I just took the name Kleinman and said Jewish, but maybe he wasn't.
And then he got bent out of shape with Kleinman because he had a lot of dough and he left Falco no money.
Right. Yeah.
But then again, well, there's a lot of contradictions.
Filled with contradictions.
Yeah. That he says he felt sorry for his mother, but then in another letter he says, boy, she's some winner. My scatterbrained mother is just another winner, he says,
Right there.
In some respects, let's forget about the shootings just for a minute. You got to feel sorry for this guy. If you didn't know anything about the shootings and you sat at a bar and this guy came up to you, he said, oh, I met my natural mother. Oh, what a winner she is. Yeah, you'd say, I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Did we ever learn exactly why she gave him up for adoption?
Well, apparently it was socially unacceptable to have a child out of wedlock, despite the fact that you were living with a married man.
Yeah, for 30 years, and he came over to your house. He came over to your house every day and left at 9 o'clock, and everyone in the neighborhood knew about it. It was an open.
But
for 30 years, she had a love affair with Kleinman.
Yes.
Right.
And then, so she must have been very young when she started her love affair with Kleinman, to then 30 years later have a child.
No, she didn't have the child 30 years later. She had the child with Kleinman in 53. She continued the relationship with him.
Right.
It makes me think a bit of Jack Nicholson's life in New Jersey.
Oh, right. He supposedly his mother was really his sister or something like that, or there was some... the person he thought was his sister was his mother. His mother, right? Exactly.
Right, that too, yeah.
And he had and an Italian was his father, but he just drifted away.
So, Jim, what was interesting to you about this letter, July 28th, 1979?
He writes a letter to the what was it? Newsday. Long Island newspaper.
I can't tell whether this is sarcastic or not.
What? No, what? He says, yes, I did try to beat my case. He went psycho when I first heard of him going off the deep end of the courtroom, I said, that's bullshit. He's just putting on an act. Whatever, maybe he just wants to get out of the courtroom, but that's all bullshit. He says, I did try to beat the case. In the next paragraph, he says, but I wasn't successful because Dr. Abramson exposed me, my conscience convicted me, and the courts didn't believe me. So here I am.
Attica, New York.
Yeah.
It's much like when him saying, yeah, and I just blew up, and hey, and the rest is history.
Don't get me wrong. This guy has big problems, but we're not hearing about it now because he's regimented and he likes the regimentation.
He loves the regimentation. But, and yeah, here he is basically saying he hoaxed the public and he did it all himself.
Yeah, and there was even another one too, March 20th that I said.
February 21st, the McGraw-Hill, because we did March 20th last week, I believe. This is the one that Eric wanted to actually talk about.
I got that here. I just got to find it.
Well, what I was saying is that there is February 21st letter to McGraw,
right?
But the letter takes on a different context because he includes it for Abrahamson with his March 20th letter.
Do we
And
have
if
that
you
March
notice
20th
at the
here?
beginning of March 20th, he writes in quotes, Sam Carr and the Demons. He's like continuing what he wrote to McGraw in February 21st about the whole thing being a
Yeah,
hoax.
February 21st, really. Yeah, that one there. He says this. He tried to justify the killings and all his other antics by saying, "Oh, Sam Carr made me do it.
Yeah.
The demons made me do it," and that in itself is a psychological thing. In fact, it says when you look up the legally sane, I think, for trial purposes, you have to be able to assist in your defense, which he could have done, and if you show during the crime a consciousness of guilt by a false alibi or a false explanation of the actions, demons and
Mm,
Sam Carr and flight,
right. That totally.
So he knew, or should have known, as they say in the law world, that if he had gone to trial, all this would have came out. He could assist in his defense. That psycho stuff in the courtroom wasn't going to play.
Right.
He had consciousness of guilt because he gave a false alibi and or a false explanation for his actions, and he fled the scene. So legally, he's
culpable. Totally sane.
Yes. Again, I have to go back. If you're a cop or a bartender, these people come about almost every day in your life. They're not shooting people, and
Right.
maybe they go home and beat their wives, but these people are in our society on a daily basis. We can't look at David Berkowitz as some unique situation that we never saw before.
No, they're all around us in different shades and colors. That's why I think Christ said, walk amongst the sinners, namely, they're around us.
That's
It's
true.
Who knows how many times I've shaken my hands with a murderer. Jim, I want to ask your opinion. Why do you think he chose Sam Carr in the Son of Sam letters? Why Sam? Why do you think? Because I just read something I hadn't known in one of the letters.
You saw his name in the phone book.
You know why? Because I see in one of the letters where he writes that he actually was in the brush or hiding with a shotgun wanting to murder Sam Carr.
Murder Sam Carr, right. He was there. He instead shot the dog, but he was there to shoot Sam.
Harvey.
Well, did he say that or somebody else said it?
No, he wrote it's in another letter. It's in another
rifle. He wants to kill Sam Carr.
But the dog came out first and he couldn't wait for Sam.
He killed the dog.
I wonder how true that is, though, because I have a feeling that even though Yonkers police didn't seem to, really go to the ends of the earth to find him as a dog killer, I have a feeling if he had shot Sam Carr, that history would have been a little different up
absolutely.
in Yonkers.
I was just thinking the same thing. We're on the same wavelength there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry, Jim.
That's all right.
Jim, listen to this. There's something that came to my mind. When he writes to Dr. David Abrahamson, he's very level-headed.
Right.
Right? There's nothing really psychotic.
No.
Now, this letter, which I asked, who is he writing to? So
which one? The McGraw-Hill letter?
April 23rd. So
get
you're back to preaching again, I see. It's a lengthy letter, and it's absolutely psychotic.
Yeah, and it's not written to Abramson.
Yeah, and so it kind of almost. I don't know if Abramson ever saw this letter.
I don't think this was written to.
No, I don't think it was written to him. But writing to whomever else, it's still him, but the thoughts, the expressions are very different than with Abramson. I mean, this is a guy that when he writes with Abramson, in a way, when he talks with Maury Terry, he's controlled and he knows what he's doing. But here he's to whomever, and he opens up the way. I mean, it's completely different from how he writes to Abramson on March 20th and May 16th.
Well, that's because Abramson wanted him to talk like this. And even Abramson said, he says, I don't mind coming up to visit you, but I think writing for your purposes, David, is better because you're letting a lot more out. And again, he's regimented. No matter what he says, nothing can happen to him. I mean, we can say some of it is a lie, but maybe it's not. I mean, but he's
Mhm.
incarcerated. Nothing's going to happen to him. Maybe he wouldn't say that in a one-to-one office atmosphere. So
I mean,
go ahead.
No, but Jim, are you saying that Abramson would have wanted him to write to whomever this person is the way he did
Well,
about murdering and
we don't know that.
well, we don't know that, and
we don't know that. No,
how would Abramson stop him if he wanted to?
right. But my point is that the psychology of pen to paper is very different of how he expresses himself.
We also have to leave out a very other basic thing. I have to assume that while in prison, David lines up at a window with a nurse and he said, "Here's your pills, David."
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and these things that we see sneaking through here, contradictions, were probably an hour before pill period.
Oh yes, the drugs.
It's definitely something to think about. One of the most psychotic things in this letter is here, in my opinion. Your articles about Hitler and your writings were very interesting. I myself don't care for him either. However, the fascinating thing is our similarities in so very many things. Our lives are very similar, our thoughts and actions too. He's comparing himself to Hitler. I mean, this guy's insane. But this is very telling too. I read his biography. It was like looking into a mirror, except for his involvement with the occult. We were very much the same. So here he is saying that he was never involved in the occult.
Right.
I mean,
was Hitler? I don't know. Was Hitler involved?
that's the word, that he was heavily involved in like occult.
The occult played a lot in National Socialism, but it was really more Himmler than Hitler. The head of the SS.
So John C has which is from the occult books he read. Not quite sure if that's a question, but Ruby, if you're still here, you had put up you had a link with all of the books that Maury Terry had read. Maybe that might be interesting to John C. All right, so listen, we want to get.
I just want to bring one more thing out. And I don't know if you got my folder up there.
Of course I do. Which one?
The third page of that folder where we discuss Weeman in that same paragraph there. He says, have you got that there? Yeah.
Hold on. This one right here?
No, it's the July 2nd one where we
July 2nd. Let me find July 2nd. I'm very sorry. Right here.
All right. He says, as I said before, I wanted to get back to this. Never would I have a real girlfriend and intimate companionship to share my life with. We also know from other letters that he also said that if he experienced different sex acts and orgies, he wouldn't have killed people. I mean,
right.
However, next page in that folder there, his handwritten thing, he says, if he's talking about the shooting victims, he says, if they were in the car and they did have their clothing off and were engaged in sex, then I would be somewhat justified in killing them. Sex outside of marriage is a heinous sin.
I mean, this is sick. And then he writes their names with the Hutchinson River Parkway.
Well, yes, he's sick, but like I said, these people exist in our society. I don't think if that is to start off with, that dyslexia was addressed and his other issues were taken care of by his parents, who were old school Jews who probably didn't want to think that he had problems.
Right.
They certainly weren't Orthodox, though.
Yeah, but culturally, it's
yes.
I know what Jim's talking about.
Right. That Stratford Avenue crowd. I'm old enough to remember when the Jews were over there, and I grew up in the Bronx. When I was a kid, I could speak a little Italian, a little Hebrew. I could get through the. That was one of the advantages of growing up there. And I interacted with these people, and how you doing? And their kids were friends of mine, and so. But the point is, had his initial problems been addressed, maybe he would not have gone off the deep end.
Right. It's very possible.
You're 100% correct with that. That's exactly what somebody recently wrote about Aleister Crowley. If his mother had not been so insanely of a distorted Christianity, maybe he would not have turned out the way he did.
Well, that's brought up too. He brings up the whole Christianity thing when he was in Kentucky or someplace.
Right.
Yeah.
He says, after a while, he said, "Hey, give me a break with this." Even he knew it was a little overbearing.
Right.
So that religion thing comes into play too. The the latching on to you and talking down to you and the religious concept that comes into play too. So even Caparetta said that before he went to the army, yeah, he was all right, and he probably would have been all right over the remaining years. Of course, the drugs come into play in the army,
Right.
So
The
the point
social
is-
alienation after the army.
But
exactly.
it brings us to the question, if he was so repulsed by the overbearing preaching of Satan and evil and demons at the Baptist church, what then makes him in Korea coming back to America so fanatically religious?
Sorry, guys. I got a little
Uh,
lost my track there a little.
well, why does anybody get, they seek out some type of solution for their own lives through religion. It
Oh,
doesn't.
yes, I agree, but I'm looking for the transition in this specific personage we're dealing with.
Well, he went. You mean the time point when it happened?
Yeah, I mean, in
Well,
other words, he's repulsed by the Baptist preaching.
Yeah.
But then we know from Comparetto letters he rewrites that he starts to
Right.
take narcotics, LSD, and then he comes back and he's a Bible thumper, perhaps behaving a bit like the people he encountered in Kentucky.
No, I think the timeline is wrong. He came back. He started getting religion in Korea, came back to the Bronx, I believe, and then actually no, maybe actually you know what? I can't speak to this because I'm
Right,
thinking.
right.
I think
But
he was in Beth
but-
Haven while in the army.
But
Yes,
it's
in
safe to
the
say
army
that.
in Kentucky at
Yeah.
Fort Knox.
Yeah. Well,
Then he
Sorry,
was sent
sorry,
to
Jim.
Korea.
Whatever the time frame is, drugs and the overbearance of religion, compounded by his own personal problems. We're looking at a guy doomed to failure.
Exactly. Doomed to failure, right. But the thing is, there's so many people like that out there still
Right.
his age working the post office gigs,
Exactly.
getting, and not having done what he did.
But
And
that was another point I was going to bring out. Is that the initial thing about of course, it was Maury Terry's fault, but the initial thing about the occult and devils and parks and everything like that, and even he says it was all bullshit. It's just
Totally.
But people still are carrying that torch. Oh, the occult, and this guy said this, and my girlfriend's uncle's coworker told me that. And
Yeah. Well, listen, these people are in the rearview mirror now. They're
Right.
not even that whole thing isn't even worth comparing to. We're in a different age. But this Enigma said something here which is actually kind of interesting, and it got cut off, and I'm curious to see where that went. I think if you look at the totality of these writings, I somehow don't think it's actually very fair to characterize DB the way it seems we are currently. The overwhelming majority of them are, and then here it is. The rest of it, DN, I'm assuming he meant DB. DB communicating clearly, honestly, mostly respectfully, with very clear logical thinking. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Enigma.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind
Again,
of what
why is he doing that? Because he's regimented. Nothing can happen to him.
nothing can happen.
Spill the beans. Here's
He's
the
already been
story.
convicted, right?
That's right.
Yeah, let's just let it all out.
What do I
Yeah,
got to lose?
Totally. Well, anyway, guys, listen. I never envisioned these psychiatric Sundays to be epic
Very
long
telling.
shows.
Very telling. But it was good research on your part.
Yeah, thank you, and of course Eric as well. Eric, my co-producer on this, and of course Jim. You came through too. This is interesting stuff. We brought up the whole notion that possibly there was a dyslexia issue here, and also, just adding more insight. So, I wanted to get a caller in, but it doesn't. I put up the link 5 times and no one's called in. So I think we'll just leave it there. Jim, any last words?
No, I think we got quite a few good points across.
Perfect.
It's a matter for the rest of the listeners if they want to access those letters and read them for themselves. If they see something that we didn't bring up in the next week, bring it up.
Yeah, bring up, suggest topics to us. I mean, the whole point of this is that we're not you, Jim. I'm talking to the audience. The whole point is, that we are doing this together as a sort of a group, as a community. So, all right, Jim. So listen, you guys will next see Jim tomorrow evening on Manny Monday, where we're going to analyze the second Patrick O'Shaughnessy tape, and we are lining up a special guest for that show, who also knew Patrick as well, pretty pretty well, actually, but we're not sure that he's going to make it. So we're going to just leave that. But Rince and Faye will be with us tomorrow night, and we're going to go through Patrick O'Shaughnessy Part 2. All right, Jim. So we'll see you tomorrow at 6. All right, my friend?
Very good.
Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Eric, any last words for the audience?
Well, I think it was just, it's incredible, these letters. I still think that there's a lot more to the, I think maybe I might have been misunderstood. I think that he's very much in control of what he's doing. Yes, there is the regimentation when he writes to the psychiatrist, but I'm wondering, I still think there's something schizophrenic there, because when he's still regimented, he's writing to somebody else and he goes back to his manic,
to the crazy, right? Well, maybe it was as Jim surmised and posited, it was he hadn't yet been medicated that day. I mean, all of these things are definitely possible, but I wouldn't be, why would I would never look askance at someone saying that he was schizophrenic, because clearly he had major mental issues. So, schizophrenia is just one of those things. So I can't diagnose him, of course, but I wouldn't
we can only try to analyze the letters. We can't do any psychoanalysis.
Right. We're not trained, but we are human beings and we have thoughts and intuitions just like any other intelligent human beings. And so that's kind of what we're doing with this.
But I put forth this question, I ponder, was he ever, since he wasn't a psychologist but a psychiatrist, did Abrahamson ever subscribe, or at the prison, narcotics? What narcotics was he subscribed to take?
That would be a good.
And was he even given any medicine when the Brooklyn County, I think, appointed Abrahamson to him for the court?
I think I've read that he was drugged up pretty much to the hilt. They pilled him up in Brooklyn and in Attica, but I could be wrong about that, so I don't want to say for sure. All right, Eric, any final words before I take it on out?
No, just stay well. I'll be tuning in tomorrow, and I look forward. And if anybody does find other David Berkowitz letters out there that have nothing to do with the psychiatric letters, let us know.
Right, and we're particularly interested in correspondence between Maury Terry and David Berkowitz. I have a very sneaky suspicion in my mind that there are probably hundreds of letters written between David Berkowitz and Maury Terry, and I want to see them, and I want to analyze them.
One woman said to me, "Do you really think he gave everything to Josh Zeman?"
I don't know. I'm not involved in any of that. I don't even want to say.
So in other words, does Terry have other things stored away that is just his family just has boxed up?
I don't know. I'm not privy to any of that, so I have no clue.
That's why I wanted to get in touch with the family by way of Michael Novotny.
Well, Novotny's unfortunately gone.
I know.
And the family ain't cooperating. Believe me, they are not cooperating. So anyway, Eric, so thank you for another great show. I'm going to take you off, and
great show.
You're very welcome.
Yourself.
Thank you, Eric. So stay on the line. We'll say goodbye off the air.
Okay.
And sorry, I took him off. Sorry, Eric, I took you off a little early.
Take me off.
All right. So anyway, guys, listen, great show. Exactly what I envisioned when we started Psychiatric Sunday. Just analyzing as a crowd these letters, which provide, in my opinion, excellent insight into the life and times of David Berkowitz and, of course, his motivations. So expect a Psychiatric Sunday every Sunday at 11. Not sure what next week's topic is going to be, because we kind of research during the week and we spitball ideas and we find the letters that we like, and but we are trying to construct a narrative here, and we are on this Why I Did It. So there may be another Why I Did It part 3, but then soon after we are going to get into how I did it, and that should be amazing too. All right, guys, well, listen, thank you so much. We will see you tomorrow night on Manny Monday, where we got the great Jim Fay, John Rinciari, and potentially a third guest who was involved in the Patrick O'Shaughnessy and the YPD and was friends with all those guys as well. We have spoken. He has agreed to come on the show. but not sure if it's going to work out technically. And so we're all dealing with that. But I'm going to try my best. And in either case, we're going to have Faye and Rinse for you guys tomorrow. And I am looking so forward to it. I'm preparing right now a blockbuster live stream on Thursday night entitled Why Untermeyer Park Had Nothing to Do with Son of Sam. And that's going to reintroduce my Untermeyer Park series back to the mix. But whereas last year, when I was walking around that park, I was convinced that there was a 22 Disciples of Hell and a Son of Sam cult. This year, I believe the complete opposite. So I want to recurate the Untermeyer Park series back up in the fashion and the narrative, which I believe is the truth, which is that Untermeyer Park had nothing to do with Son of Sam. And I'm going to be using excerpts from all my old videos to prove that point. And then once that video goes up, I'll reintroduce all the old Untermeyer Park videos. We'll repost them online, because at least then they'll have some context to them. All right. Well, listen, excellent show. I love doing these shows. I love interacting with you guys. You guys are the best audience on YouTube. Thank you so much. And we will see you tomorrow night on Manny Monday, the Patrick O'Shaughnessy tapes, part 2. Take care, guys. Thanks a lot.